Alright guys, Eldritch Moon is out, and it's time for me to show you the first deck that I've been working on since it dropped. It is the Rakdos Madness Vampire deck. So you can see here I'm running 25 creatures, 11 spells, 24 lands for a total of 60 cards, 18 black cards, 21 red cards, and my curve is 2, 14, 13, 3, 4. But some of those higher mana cost cards can be cast via Madness for cheaper. So basically, I'm all about the Madness mechanic, and what I really wanted to do was discard creatures directly into play, because we have a bunch of creatures that can be discarded for 3 mana straight into the battlefield. We'll start at the top here. Incorrigible Use is a 5 mana 4/3 haste, but if you can get it out for its Madness cost, you only pay 3. So if you have a discard outlet on the second turn, that's another key theme of this deck is second turn discard outlet, third turn Madness. So Incorrigible Use on the third turn is 4/3 haste, really good. Another 3 mana Madness that we have is the Bloodhall Priest, so you just get a 4/4 on the third turn, which is really good. And later on in the game, when you're Hellbent, she has a nice ability. What else can we Madness out here? Fiery Temper is not something we're going to talk about right now. I'll go up the deck list in a minute. So Stensia Masquerade, again, if you get a creature on turn 2. If this is not the ideal turn 3 Madness thing, unless maybe you get a Fury Blade Vampire, which we'll talk about. But it gives your attacking creatures first strike, so I mean for the Vampire deck you got a lot of low toughness guys that tend to trade, but they have high power. But this lets you swing freely and just kill stuff, and if they don't block your stuff and lose their own creatures, then you're going to hit them for a bunch of damage and put +1/+1 counters on all your vampires. It's really good. I don't think I would ever go less than 3. And that's it for the 3 mana discards, but we also have some 2 mana discards in Asylum Visitor that we can Madness out for 2, maybe miss a land drop, or maybe that's just all you have in your hand. Same thing with Blood Mad Vampire. You can Madness this out for 2. So it's all about using the Madness ability to put creatures straight onto the battlefield and win with those creatures. So let's start at the bottom. Lightning Axe is a 1 mana deal 5 damage to a creature. You can discard a card or pay 5, so it is a discard outlet for our Madness card. So I mean, on the third turn, you can play Lightning Axe, kill their blocker, and drop one of our 2 mana Madness cards, of which we have 5. You know, that's a possible third turn option. 5 damage to a creature for 1 mana is a good rate anyway, even if you have to discard a land or something. And later on in the game, you don't have to discard if you don't want to. You can just pay 6 mana, which is something that you probably never do, but you know, it is an option, so there it is. Asylum Visitor, 2 mana 3/1 at the beginning of each player's upkeep. If that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So this card in the late game, it can go off. Olivia's Dragoon is one of our better 2-drops, and there are times when you have just a bunch of land in hand or some useless cards like a late game Fury Blade Vampire. You just discard them all through Olivia's Dragoon, and then you turn on your Asylum Visitor so you can draw 2 more cards off the top of your deck and find what you're looking for. And again, it's a card that you can discard straight into the battlefield for just 2 mana. And it has 3 power. Really good. Stromkirk Condemned is one of our all-stars here. 2 mana 2/2. The mana cost is a bit steep, but you know, we skewed the mana base a bit toward black to be able to play it. And you discard a card, and vampires you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. I just learned last game that you can only activate this ability once each turn. So that's some text that I'm going to remember, and you should too. Still a very, very strong card because it's a discard outlet. Not repeatable. It is repeatable from one turn to the next, but not in the same turn. But it's a very strong effect to give your vampires +1/+1. Era Falkenrath, one of my favorite cards in the deck. 2 mana 2/1, discard a card to transform it, so you get a 2 mana 3/2 flyer. Once you transform it, you lose your discard outlet, which is kind of bad because this deck does really get off on the Madness mechanic and the ability to use it whenever you want to. But a 3/2 flyer for 2 mana, you're not going to pass that up. Olivia's Dragoon, I'm going to stand by this statement. I'm going to make it and stand by it, is that this is the best 2-drop in the deck. It's 2 mana 2/2. It's discard a card and it gains flying until end of turn, but you can discard a card whenever you want to for whatever reason. Unlike some of the other cards in here, like Era Falkenrath we just talked about, you can only discard once, and Fury Blade Vampire, which we'll get to, you can only discard at the beginning of combat on your turn, so it kind of limits when you can activate your Madness, but this you can discard whenever you want to. So if you have a 3 mana card that you want to discard, you can do it on your turn, get Incorrigible Use, and then swing for the 4/3 haste on the ground, and your Dragoon gets flying, so you can swing for 2 in the air, which is a really, really strong turn 3 play. Fury Blade Vampire, so 2 mana 1/2 trample at the beginning of combat on your turn. You may discard a card. If you do, it gets +3/+0. If you do this on turn 2 into Incorrigible Use on turn 3, you'll be attacking for 8 on the third turn. 4/2 trample, 4/3 haste, pretty strong. Also, discarding Stensia Masquerade on the third turn is not horrible with this card because you get a 4/2 first strike trample. Swinging in, that gets a +1/+1 counter. So that's a strong play. She's really good. Later in the game, you'll probably just end up pitching her, but as a turn 2 play, she's really, really strong. Liliana, Heretical Healer, 3 mana, 2/3 lifelink, and of course, whenever one of your other creatures dies, she flips over, you get a zombie. And her flip side is where it's at, because +2, each player discards a card. Your opponent's going to lose a card, but you're just going to pitch a creature of some kind and cast it for its madness cost. Maybe you discard a Fiery Temper and kill one of their dudes, but you're going to get that +2 casts you a spell, and it makes them discard a card. Really, really, really good here. Plus, you can get cards back from your graveyard, and that emblem is just fucking stupid. So, moving on, we have Blood Mad Vampire. 3 mana, 4/1. Not a good rate for 3 mana, but you can madness it for 2. And going back to Olivia's Dragoon, you can activate this whenever you want. So, let's imagine your opponent attacks you. On his end step, for just 2 mana, you can drop a 4-power guy and swing into. You're giving him pseudo haste. And 4 power is a lot, and if it hits, it gets a +1/+1 counter. And if you're able to pull off the hastiness, that'll happen more often than you think. Olivia is a 3/3 for 3 with flying. I mean, that's good enough to play out on its own, but she's a vampire. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can discard a card. So it's a discard outlet that, you can kind of control, but it's not instant speed like Dragoon always is. But if you discard a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, gets haste, becomes a vampire, all good things. Stency Masquerade we talked about earlier, but I mean, it's just such a good card. Attacking creatures you control have first strike. That is just amazing. So you're either going to be able to just wipe their board, do a bunch of damage, or trade with their first strike guys, since the white first strike guys are a thing. And whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if they don't block your guys, they're making your team tougher. Fiery Temper, you hardly ever hard cast this card in this deck. There's so many discard outlets. So this is Lightning Bolt, but you have to have a discard outlet. So, I mean, with Fury Blade Vampire, it's only a Lightning Bolt at the beginning of combat on your turn. With Era Falconwrath, it's only a Lightning Bolt once, but with Olivia's Dragoon, it's a Lightning Bolt whenever you need a Lightning Bolt. Liliana, the Last Hope. I'm going to say 3 mana Planeswalker, and that's going to be very difficult for a lot of decks to deal with. Her +1 protects herself and lets your creatures attack. I mean, if they have a 2/2, this won't kill it. But all of a sudden, your Blood Mad Vampire, your 4/1 that was looking to trade with their 2/2, all of a sudden can just swing freely and go right at them. Same thing with your 3/1, I can't remember the name of it now. Your Asylum Visitor, if there's a 2/2 on the other side of the field, Liliana just shrinks it to 0 power, and your 3/1 can just swing. These are some high power guys. So this lets your guys get through, and just being able to start ticking up a Planeswalker early in the game is pretty ridiculous, and in the late game, she can get you cards back from your graveyard to cast them again. Kalidas, Trader of Get. This is a super powerful card, but it's probably the worst card in this deck, because for 4 mana up front, you just get a 3/4 lifelink on defense, which is fine. But that ability is pretty expensive, and it's not very often you get to make the zombies unless your opponent chump blocks or something, but usually in that case you're winning anyway. But, the ability, even though it's expensive, it has come in handy from time to time, and a 3/4 lifelink for 4, it's a good card, but it's one of the weakest in the deck just because of the mana cost and the fact that, it doesn't play well with Madness in any way. It's just a super powerful card that we're slotting in here. It's not synergistic or anything like that. I mean, it's a vampire, so it gets Stency Masquerade. It'll get a counter if it hits, but Blood Hall Priest, 4 mana, 4/4, but if you Madness it out, you get that 4/4 for 3 mana, and whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, if you have no cards in hand, which you can make happen if you want to through Olivia's Dragoon, or which will happen naturally since you're playing Madness, then that effect can go off. 2 damage to target creature or player. That's really good if you can get that to go off. Incorrigible Use. I've cast this for 5 mana a couple of times. Not very much. Like I said, you can do it. But really, you just want to discard this somehow and get a 4/3 haste for 3, which is really strong. And Ob Nixilis. So, I mean, our curve is pretty low, obviously. We have 3 5-mana cards that we want to discard for 3 mana, and we have 2 4-mana cards that we want to discard for 3 mana. So essentially, our only cards over 3 mana, when you really think about it, are Kalitas and Ob Nixilis. Still got to play 24 because we need to hit our land drops on time, and we want to get the 4/5 mana range in a reasonable amount of time. And the mana base, we're playing 4 Evolving Wilds to fix for red or black, playing the Dragon Skull Summits, playing the Smoldering Marshes. Those are obvious. I'm not playing any of the tap lands because I'm playing these over they're not gates, I don't know what the fuck they're called now, but the non-gate gates. because I'd like to thin my deck out since our curve is pretty low. And we're skewing towards black more. 10 swamps versus 6 mountains, because we do have a lot. Well, we don't have a lot more double black, but we have a lot more double black that we actually need. Most of our early creatures are black. Stromkirk Condemned, if we want to play that on turn 2, we need double black. Liliana on turn 3 is double black, and so is this Liliana on turn 3. The double red cards are Incorrigible Use, which isn't double red if you madness it, and Fiery Temper, which isn't double red if you madness it. So the only way you're ever going to get stuck on red is if you want to cast multiple red spells per turn and you only have one source. It's happened rather infrequently. It has happened. Maybe 9/7 is the right call. I'm not really sure. It's been good to me so far, so I don't feel the need to change it. But if you take it out for some games, then maybe you'll change your mind on that. But that's the deck. I don't know when I'll get a gameplay video up. I did a stream today, so I will put some links in the video description to some Twitch VODs that just happened, for the past 2 or 3 hours I've been streaming, if you want to watch those or not. So there is some gameplay available on my Twitch channel. I'll try to get a video out hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow. So thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you for some gameplay pretty soon.